Hello everyone, I'm Flick, and today I wanted to talk a little bit more about Monster Hunter Wilds now that I've finished both the low rank and high rank storylines, hunted all currently available monsters, and put over 45 hours into the game. I've previously done videos on the open beta struggling to run on a dated PC, and a follow-up to that playing on a really good PC, as well as a full let's play of experiencing the game from beginning to end. I'm not going to be in depth enough to call this a full dissection, nor do I feel the game has enough meat on the bone to warrant that really. So let's just call this some final thoughts on the game, now that I've sampled all it has to offer, with a slight focus on story and characters, since this was the developer's first attempt at really bringing the plot to the fore at, I believe, the expense of other aspects. I know 45 hours in a Monster Hunter game isn't that long compared to previous entries in the series. For example, on the Steam versions alone I have 300 hours in Monster Hunter World and 170 hours in Monster Hunter Rise, having previously played both of them on console for similar or greater lengths. But in those 45 hours, I was not exaggerating when I said I have sampled everything the game has to offer. There is no doubt that the game is a commercial success no matter what complaints I bring up here, so let's get that out of the way now. It not only became Capcom's fastest selling game ever, but it eclipsed both Elden Ring and, more amazingly, Dota 2 for the highest concurrent players in the first week of launch on Steam. I foresaw that it wouldn't sell well, based purely on the kind of hardware you needed to have the game run smoothly on PC and the general poor performance it has on consoles. I massively underestimated people's commitment to the Monster Hunter series by quite a bit, I guess you could say. My complaints are still valid though, so let's double back around to that subject of the 45 hours of playtime to see everything on offer and start from there. The long tail for Monster Hunter games tends to be the grind for materials needed for weapons and armour, as well as simply the joy of hunting monsters, especially with friends. This is where Monster Hunter Wilds excels, because the act of fighting the monsters with friends remains fun. The core it needed to have is still there, but there's a lot of things getting in the way as you experience the journey through the story. We'll go through these roadblocks one by one, but to give a quick overview first, in general it leads me to feel that the long tail for this game will be the most enjoyable portion of the game, but that's because the process of going from hunt to hunt with friends and farming for gear, or just hunting for fun, with less menus getting in the way and no story, actually helps the game's general feel a great deal, and you can only experience this after you've gone through low rank and high rank. It is to the game's detriment, in my opinion, that this is how I ended up feeling about the game. You should not have to get to the post-game to get the best possible experience. I value the journey as much as the ultimate destination, so the story through low rank and high rank feeling like a trudge through mud is rough, and not something most players will likely put up with. At the time of writing this, 42% of Steam players have finished high rank's story quests, and 56% have completed at least 50 quests, but that counts both story and side quests potentially. This roughly gives a general metric of the amount of people who gave up on the game after finishing low rank, or who quit shortly into high rank. This is a quite significant chunk of players who will not get to experience the game at its best because they've been taken out by the game's hurdles along the way. These hurdles are pretty substantial too, so I don't blame them for crashing out because of, say, the pitiful info dump laden story cutscenes or insultingly easy gameplay, so let's tackle those one at a time. The plot of the game is very, very boring. Cutscenes meander and waste your time with a lot of superfluous, slowly spouted dialogue from uninteresting characters. This makes the start of the game in particular feel glacial. Since low rank monsters die so quickly, you'll spend less time fighting than watching cutscenes. None of it is interesting save perhaps the concept of the Guardian monsters, which are artificially created protectors of the city of Wyveria that have learned the concept of being a predator and are filled with milk. But this is just a new gimmick for the new Monster Hunter. This generation's twist following right on from the same thing in previous games like Tempered, Apex, Feral, Afflicted, and so on. The overbloated cutscenes were so tedious that even people just watching the game via my live streams got sick of them, and believe me, if they were just bad, I'd be riffing on them and trying to be entertaining, but when they're just slow and boring, there isn't much to work with. I honestly suspect that skipping any cutscene that doesn't involve seeing a monster doing something will vastly improve your experience with the game overall. Your hunter now being able to talk opened up the possibility of having a story that revolved around your character's persona, actions and decisions, rather than only being able to give affirmative nods and grunts in cutscenes, aka the Final Fantasy XIV problem. And yet the story of Wilds is still bloated with characters that talk more and have more agency than you do. A relevant point of note, The most talking your hunter does is in setting up and concluding side quests via conversing with the NPCs who give you the quests. In the main story you talk now and then, but rarely in a manner that can't be summed up in as asking a question on the behalf of the player, or simply acknowledging that the hunter listened to something someone said. The question, what personality does the hunter you play as have, would be exceptionally difficult to answer without accidentally attributing your own personality onto them. They are stoic, is about the best I can manage, based on their words and deeds. The irritating child Nata, Alma the handler, and Gemma the blacksmith, along with a few other characters like Olivia, matter more to the story than you do. Really, you're still just the hunter of the team. You're there to hit each threat in the face until it dies, and then nothing else. Really, the only true point of agency you have is the finale of low rank, when your hunter takes it upon themselves to rid the land of a potential apocalyptic threat, rather than go through with the agreed plan to avoid awakening it, which would sacrifice the power source keeping the area alive. Your hunter goes with the, nah, screw it, I'ma kill this bitch strategy, and to be fair, it works. It is literally the only time the hunter takes matters into his own hands, though. I'll talk more about Nata as a character in a moment, but in general he is the catalyst by which the story both starts and moves, and when you think about how it all happened, it makes very little sense. He's discovered in the desert plains, in an area thought to be uninhabited by a guild survey team, having left the ruins of Wyveria as instructed by his uncle, when their hidden village of Keepers was attacked by Arkfeld, which is seen in the game's opening cutscene. Apparently years pass between this opening and where our hunter comes into things. That isn't really reflected on how Nata looks, or the story as a whole. As a side note, it is ridiculous that every person, tribe, settlement, or humanoid creature in this region of the world has, despite the dangers of the world in which they live, never created a weapon. They literally don't know what weapons are. They are baffled by the concept, when weapons are just tools like any other implement that even the most remote tribes in real life understand the point of. It is beyond stupid, but we don't need to spend any more time on that. The problem I'm mentioning next was caught by the developers, and a band-aid was slapped on to try and fix it. Nata was able to stumble his way out of the ruins his village hides in, through the icy mountains, through the flooded forest, and out into the desert before passing out in the sand, without encountering any of the extremely dangerous wildlife that they don't have weapons for, that you have to kill on the journey back to his village. Nor does he meet any of the tribes that you go on to meet through your travels. They don't know what weapons are, even though I said I wasn't going to mention it a lot, and I found myself doing so anyway because it's so stupid. Despite this miraculous journey, he then seems amazed at each new area as you visit them on your journey that he should have known existed. It makes no sense, but as I said, the developers caught this one. So, how did they fix it? Simple. Nata followed a cave straight from his isolated village that came out in the desert. My friend believes this cave is where you see Nata in the intro when he loses his glove and falls, yet he finds his glove outside his village when you get back there later in the game, so that can't be so. Such a cave seems really handy, they should probably use that to find their way back easily, right? Nah, over the year or so that's passed, it entirely collapsed, so they can't use it, they can't blow it open, whatever. Plot hole filled. Airtight. Sure. How about this one? Why don't they use the flying airboat to survey the area to find Arkfeld faster and get Nata back to his village super easy, like the one that finds him in the intro? They forgot to plug that hole. Anyway, that's the least of the problems with him though, so let's just move on to characters, and specifically Nata's character arc, Veld. That's a little joke, because they're just so alike, don't you know? Constant whining, crying, and getting way too much screen time aside, Nata comes across as a very poorly written character. After being told to flee his village, he forms an immense hatred for Arkfeld. I presume it's because he believes Arkfeld has killed all the keepers who stayed behind, even though he didn't witness it. That part's fine. This hatred for Arkfeld grows in Nata as the hunter and associates journey with him to try and find his way back to the village, to the point where when they see Arkfeld when travelling, Nata wants to fight him with a pebble. The point I'm trying to make is the hatred has become so exceptionally strong inside him that he almost wanted to launch a suicidal attack against Arkfeld armed with a tiny stone. That's how much he hates that monster. He even does the Arthur fist clench meme when Arkfeld eventually leaves unharmed. This makes it rather confusing when, at the tail end of low rank story, Nata starts to rethink his position a little bit. You discover that Arkveld is a guardian, the term for an artificially created monster that the keepers tend to, and has somehow learned to act like a predatory animal and is now out of control. As Alma puts it at one point, Arkveld isn't just hunting and eating as a predator instinct, but rather as a destructive one, so that means it has to be put down. This makes Nata sad and angry at your hunter for some reason. He sees the destructive rampage of Arkveld as its first freely made choice, rather than choices made based on its restrictions as a guardian. He feels this lack of freedom and the discovery of more beyond these restrictions mimic his own experiences learning about the world outside his sheltered life as a keeper. This moment is all the sillier because Nara notices these similarities between him and Arkveld and begs the hunter not to kill it, while you're watching the out-of-control beast rip a monster's body into bits while standing atop a pile of rotten corpses in a cave splattered with guardian blood. It feels like it's a desperate attempt to try and bring some emotion to the fore after so much tedious talking. But it goes even further because the end credits scene when you finish low rank reveals Arkveld somehow spawned an egg, which hatched, and this makes Nara happy because there's another one out there somewhere. He doesn't seem as fussed when you then go on to kill that one as the final foe of high rank. I can't overstate just how many cutscenes in this game are people standing or sitting around a table talking very slowly about nothing interesting, or on the rail sections where you ride your Sekaret mount on a set path you are not allowed to deviate from while characters talk around you. This is almost entirely down to poor presentation and even worse pacing. There isn't really much for them to talk about for a vast majority of the journey until they meet the Keepers, but because they were so afraid of using the old Monster Hunter system of just hunting monsters to unlock an urgent quest, which moves you to the next main point of plot, they wanted everything to be linked together. I mentioned that the cutscenes involving monsters are good, but most are just talking for the sake of talking. With regards to poor presentation, I picked out what I think is the most egregious example.
よく来たね。待っていたよ。もしかしてあなたが？ああ、森人がそう呼んでいるものならね。はじめまして。私たちは。よろしよろし。だいたい聞いたから。やっと会えたね。ちょっといい？これはまた疲れただろ。今日は休んで。教えてください。僕森人でナタって言います。ガーディアンがいて、そのアルシュベルトが里を。そのガーディアンのことを聞きたいんだね。はい、あいつは外に行ってて食べるようになって。ガーディアンがなぜ生まれたかを知っている？森人が作ったから。ついておいて。どれぐらい前のことだろうね。都の民は無限のエネルギーを生み出す流塔を作った。流塔のエネルギーは連流脈を通じて各地に運ばれ使われた。時に雷となってモンスターを解体し、時に大雨となって廃棄された毒物を洗い流し、時に炎となって稀なる物質を生み、時に重さを取り除き天まで届く建造物を作った。こうして民は自然を思いのままに扱った。 その極みにあったのがガーディアンだよ。民は従順なガーディアンを大いに用いた。怖いものはもう何もなかった。
そこまで栄えた都がなぜ滅んだのでしょうか。
とてつもない災いを呼び寄せてね。人が姿を消すと同時にガーディアンは眠りについたんだよ。
でもアルシュベルドは目を覚まして、あいつって何ですか？森人はどうしたらいいの？多神おじさんがあなたならきっと答えをくれるって。
あの命がどうあろうとしているのか私にもわからない。がっかりした？ごめんね。私と話しても素敵な言葉はやってこない。あなたと私は同じ。玉ゆらを積み重ねて生きるもの。この世界は玉ゆらを経て変わっていく。気が遠くなるその果てにあなたもアルシュベルドもどこに行く？私はそれを見守るだけよ。そのガーディアンが気になる？
僕は森人だから。違う。僕、アルシュベルドがこの先どうなるのかを知りたい。ここにいるみんなとなら多分できると思う。
あの命を自分の目で見守りなさい。あなたはそう決めたのだから。美しいね。何もかもが本当に美しい。
Late into the low-rank story, you learn about the fall of Wyveria, the city that created the Guardians and that was besieged by some unspecified enemy, which led to the destruction of the city. This is all delivered by exposition from an old Wyverian woman called the Allharkin, standing with your gaggle of characters on a cliffside, and goes on for a while, since she talks real slow. This scene reimagined with flashes or quick cuts of the past, hinting at how horrible it was when the city fell or showing the Guardian monsters protecting the city, would have still conveyed the same information but in a far more engaging way. It lends more weight to her words if we get a glimpse of the horror she lived through, and helps justify the creation of artificial life they needed to defend themselves with. It comes across as lazy that instead of something like that, we just get to look at her old face for the duration of the history lesson, with no effort to convey any particularly strong emotion. I briefly mentioned some of the other cast that feel more like the main character than your hunter, such as Alma and Gemma. If anything, it feels like they're Nara's surrogate parents or siblings and you're just their loyal bodyguard. Or dog. Let's go with dog. They tell you to kill things and you kill them. They don't really have much of a personality either, they're just there to talk and be eye candy for those so inclined. Could anyone list me their character traits? Alma really likes a pet stone she carries around, and Gemma feels insecure about being a blacksmith. I think that's about it. The hunter talks. Now, this would have been a perfect opportunity to give a hunter a personality and make them the lead in their own story. But no. Maybe next time. Outside of issues with the story, we have some lesser niggles, let's say, little problems that all add up as you go along. The story is still the main obstacle between you and fun in Monster Hunter Wilds, but it certainly isn't the only one. Everyone has already talked about how the game looks, and you can see that for yourselves in the footage I'm using in the background for this video while I blather away, so I don't really need to spend much time here. The horrible sepia washes over the desert, the tinted sick green of the forest, the blinding white of the snowy tundras all make the game look very subpar. At many points through the game, the in-engine cutscenes look remarkably better than the visuals during gameplay due to the lack of the horrible filters and the saturation and colour temperature being far better balanced. A mod to make the gameplay look like the in-engine cutscene lighting would go a long way to making it look worthy of the hardware it demands. It should not be news to anyone that Monster Hunter games are best enjoyed with friends. Solo hunting is fine, of course, but cooperative hunting is where all the games really shine, and this should not be news to Capcom and the dev team, and yet, with Wilds, they appear to be determined to obfuscate being able to play with friends as much as possible. The menus in this game are an appalling mess of unnecessary layers which took the core for Monster Hunter World, which already wasn't great, and made it worse. If you want to join a friend on a hunt that involves story, you both have to see the cutscene in your own game, then one of you has to run away from the monster to join the world of the other, and if you get attacked while trying to do this process, it cancels, you have to run away and try again. And this is, of course, assuming that before all that, you were both in the same link party. Link parties are different to environmental links, friend lists, SOS flares, and squad lobbies, just to be clear. Oh, that wasn't clear? Yeah, I know. Anyway, after you finish a quest, you'll get back to your own version of the post-monster kill cutscene and be whisked off back into your own world to carry on, and then you have to repeat the process for every single monster fight. Post-game is where you can bounce between hunts a little easier through the spaghetti menus, or if you're quite happy to just hunt whatever shows up in a region, you can go out into create an environmental link and have 3 friends join you. If you did want to hunt something specific while in an environmental link though, you would have to disband that and reform via a link party or a squad lobby. Why? Shut up, that's why. It is ridiculous that through the QA process no one thought the menus were confusing, needlessly complex, or utterly redundant in some cases. It amazes me Capcom dropped the ball so hard on the menuing in this game, and I really can't say much else about that beyond them just being utter shit. I've already talked about how the game runs in previous videos, but just briefly let me revisit this topic. I was able to play through Monster Hunter Wilds on a PC that comfortably ran it on ultra settings and didn't have any issues. The same cannot be said for most, and even those who scored well on the benchmark were disappointed with the performance on launch. It's suspected that this is because there is 2 layers of DRM that Capcom has included in the release of the game. The Nouveau anti-cheat and its own proprietary anti-tamper program for mods. For a game that runs so poorly, to then further hinder it with these additions is a pathetic own goal. I opened by saying the Monster Hunter experience, the core gameplay, is still there. It's just, the game gets in its own way a lot. The game I love is still there, very deep at the end of what feels like a longer road than it really is. If you skip the cutscenes, I think the game is actually pretty short. What doesn't help it feel a little lacking is the fact it's also exceptionally easy, and monsters have very low health pools compared to previous titles. There's some monsters that only show up in high rank, and some don't play a part in the main story at all, but the overall total number of monsters also feels kinda subpar, and you'll fight most of them as part of the story. The only challenging monster I found in the entire game was Gormagala, since they'd made him quite a bit stronger this time round, and he's the second last monster you'll fight as part of the high rank story. Side note, why on earth did they put the very final monster you fight in the open beta? Don't really get that one. Anyway, the game is getting title updates in the form of a new monster every few months or so, with the first being in April, and that will most likely run for the rest of the year based on what they've done in the past with World. This trickle of new content seems like it's driven with a desire to keep player counts up and cosmetic DLC purchases high. Inevitably there'll be an expansion for Wilds. How'd I know? Well, this is Capcom, and this is Monster Hunter dev team. This is the cycle they work with, this is what they do. I'm not sure I'm looking forward to it from any story related angle. I was so appalled by the English voice acting that I switched to Japanese just to tolerate it, so I'd be lying if I said I couldn't wait to hear more or see where they go with the Guardian and Keeper storylines. I just want more big monsters to hunt. That's about it, really. I want to hunt monsters with my friends. I want to see a really good chunk of fan favourite monsters return and other new monsters to hunt that are as imaginative as some of the new entries to the series I liked in this game, such as Ajarakan, Zuwu and Jindahat. Much less talking, stronger monsters, slightly bigger HP pools. Is that so hard to do? That about does it though for thoughts I had about Monster Hunter Wilds now that I've seen everything it has to offer. I'd encourage you to check out my Let's Play of it. Yes, people do still make those in the year 2025. If you're curious about my reaction to any particular section of the story or a particular monster in it. Or if you just want to see if you agree with my opinion on the glacial pace the plot has and plods along with. Thank you for listening this far if you made it though. I appreciate you at least hearing me out. Have a great day and ta-ta for now.